Hit me.
From Studio P in Sausalito, the home of the hit, it's time for Succotash Chats, the original comedy soundcast featuring interviews from Comedy
Soundcasts.
That's right, comedians, soundcasters, miscreants, weirdos, and other showbiz folk. And now, filling in for host Tyson Sainer, here is Succotash executive producer, Marc Hershon. Oh, my goodness. What is this?
Thank you, Bill Haywatt. It is I, substitute host, executive producer, and clippable discount coupon, Marc Hershon, filling in for regular host and spanking new parent, Tyson Sainer. Well, he's not literally spanking his newborn baby. That kind of thing is frowned upon in modern society. But that is to say, since I last spoke to you in previous Epi186, Tyson and his lovely wife Laura have recently welcomed their new son into the world. His name is Gareth Franklin Sainer, and Tyson informs me that he was named after the Goblin King from the movie Labyrinth, as portrayed by David Bowie. Interesting. I didn't even know that Tyson was related to the Goblin King. I even have a picture of the littlest Sainer. Yes, while I obviously can't show it to you via this audio medium, you can see young Master Jareth featured at the top of the blog entry for this episode at our home site, succotashshow.com, and the Oz are free. As to when Tyson will be back in front of the Succotash microphone, he's predicting sometime in early March. The soundcasting world can get a little wiggly when it comes to timelines and schedules once you have a baby, but until he returns, I shall endeavor to fill the void. And this time around, the void is being filled with this Succotash Chats Epi187. My special guest is comedian, actor Frank Cronin, who I chatted up the other day via Skype as he had just completed a rather amazing 500-mile trek on foot from San Francisco to Los Angeles, which is kind of ironic because comics have been trying to make that jump from San Francisco market to Los Angeles for years, and usually it's just a Southwest flight away. It took him 41 days to make the trip, and it was not because he doesn't own a car, but because rather he wanted to raise awareness for the plight of the homeless in this country. And Frank was able to raise $20,000 for Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, which is their website, by the way, is hhcla.org, and found the experience to be rather eye-opening and almost eye-closing as well, as you'll hear in our interview. More on that as we get to our chat in just a moment. This episode of Succotash is brought to you by Henderson's Scavenger Slacks and TrumpPoetry.com. But please remember that these are pretend sponsors only, and that Succotash is 100% listener-supported. You can help us to keep the mics cranked up by clicking on the donate button at succotashshow.com and kicking some cash into the kitty. Or use the Amazon banner at the top of our site to do your online shopping, and they'll give us a little taste off the top. Or you can purchase some merch from our Succotashery, a spiffy hat perhaps, or a handy mug, and that helps us to offset production costs as well. If ponying up some scratch for your favorite Comedy Soundcast Soundcast isn't in the cards, how about just a few moments of your time to get up to iTunes and grant us a 5-star rating and a glowing review? Cost you nothing, but maybe just the thing to pull this show into the limelight so other listeners can find us. All right, with the business out of the way, and without further ado, here's my interview with Frank Cronin. On the phone, or on Skype, I should say, from Los Angeles, California, is Frank Cronin. Well, I guess you could say you're a friend of Succotash. You've been sort of on the show before, and you're a friend of mine, so I'm going to say you're a friend of Succotash.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would consider myself a friend of yours, please God, unless something has happened that I don't know about.
No, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And I'm happy to talk to Frank Cronin any day of the week. But in particular, he has just finished an amazing adventure that started up here in our neck of the woods, San Francisco, and culminated in Los Angeles. And it was really amazing because you could follow Frank on his Instagram account, on Twitter, and various other places. And he went on this trek, which I'm going to let him outline exactly what was going on. But it was kind of astounding, and I'm happy that you survived and are able to talk to us about it, Frank.
Oh, thanks, Marc. Yeah, man, I started in Marin on the north side of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was, yeah, pretty cool, man. And I did it there because mainly I used to go there. I used to travel to Marin a lot when I was a kid, to visit cousins. And also it's a national landmark, Golden Gate Bridge, kind of cool starting point.
Yeah, right down the hill from the Robin Williams Tunnel, too.
Yeah, man, yeah. It's beautiful as well, So I started there on the 15th of December. And then 41 days later, I arrived at Dynasty Typewriter Comedy Club in LA. And the interim was really, really pretty tough. It was 41 days of close to, 15 to 20 miles a day. Sometimes I was sleeping rough out every night because it was a charity walk to raise money for Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, which, yeah, man, we raised $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah, along the way there was some serious adventures.
That's great. Well, we'll put a we'll put a link on the blog post for this episode because I'm sure they're still accepting donations. One would assume.
Yeah, and they're very grateful, man. The wonderful thing about these organizations is, if you don't know how to help, the homeless yourself, or you don't know what to do with your money, or what's the best way to help, they know exactly how to use your money. So, and they're a great organization. I got a tour of the facility before I took them on as the official charity for the walk, and they have a needle exchange center, harm reduction center, and they have a refresh center where thousands of people a week have showers and can prepare for their appointments and reintegration back into society. So it's a really cool thing.
Wow.
These guys don't mess around.
Amazing. So to sort of get into the nuts and bolts of your trek, this was on foot, traveling just overland, and as you said, staying out rough, which would sort of translate for our listeners what that exactly means. What does out rough mean? All
right, so in order to get attention and raise money for a charity, you've got to have a hook. And I thought sleeping out rough under the stars with nothing but a sleeping bag and no tent was a big enough challenge for people to pay attention and then tune in and then eventually make a donation, because if you're putting yourself out there, then there's a real chance that people can kind of get behind you and back you. So that was the thought behind that. So I slept out with nothing but a waterproof sleeping bag every night, and obviously doorways, bus stops, people could invite me to their, to sleep on their porch. I think I slept on 3 porches over the 41 days. But the only rule is no walls, and it can't be like it can't be a building, so to speak. So you can have a little bit of shelter over your head, but no walls.
Wow. And you never got a lift? Nobody gave you a ride?
No. Oh yeah. Well, that's the most important thing. The whole thing was done on foot. So, yeah, man, it was quite the experience. One of the things that happened was I started off a little too strong. I had trained 6 months, to get my fitness up to spec. But then on the first day, as soon as I think I was a bit overzealous. I banged out almost a marathon the first day. I ended up in Daly City was the first stop. Yeah, and I slept beside Highway 280, between Highway 280 and an off-ramp. And yeah, the next day I was kind of like, oh, my legs are a little sorer than I thought, maybe I should slow down. But of course, young and impetuous and excited by the amount of media attention it was getting, I pushed on too hard, and before I knew it, I had massive problems with my shins.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that kind of laid me up for a few days.
Well, and so what's that? So you've injured yourself essentially. So that's slowed your progress, and you still can't go inside. You can't seek relief really in terms of getting out of the elements and trying to have somebody take care of you. Yeah, and that's it. What actually happened was it was all very enlightening, really. So the second morning, after sleeping one night beside Highway 280 in Daly City, next to, I think it was a 24-hour fitness, I woke up and I was doing a piece to camera. At that point, I had a cameraman following in a follow car, and
I turned my head a little too swiftly, and I nearly took my eye out with a twig. So great. Before I let it sit for, I eventually found the twig later that evening. It had gone so deep and so far behind my eye that it didn't show itself for about 8 hours. But it eventually showed itself in a subway, and in a subway when I was getting a sandwich later that day. And I thought, okay, I take it out. Please God, it doesn't get infected. Next morning, I wake up, and of course, it was infected. I couldn't open the eye, and I went to urgent care. And what actually transpired was I got a real insight into, what happens when you get sick, when you have no support system and no shelter and no place to go. So my shins were sore, and my eye is closed over. I walk into urgent care, and I have no health insurance because, well, I'm a poor Irish immigrant.
You're a comedian.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. My wages are laughter. And, man, so the beauty was, though, because I was doing it for a charity, I found these wonderful people. A nurse and a doctor both took care of me. Well, I haven't got the bill yet, so I think it's completely free. And they gave me some antibiotic eye drops to take with me on the road, and a fake cornea, or a lens that would act as a fake cornea, because I had lost 30% of my 30% corneal abrasion, which is basically you're in eye losing territory.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so it really was something special to start off. For the first 48 hours, twig to the eye, almost lose the eyesight, and now I got 500 miles to go.
Wow, two days homeless, and you're already down.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally. Do you know what happened though? That was the making and breaking of people's interest in the series. So, because I guess it was a daily series. I uploaded about 3 1-minute videos a day to Instagram, and because of the personal nature of the vlog, and I wasn't holding anything back. I was trying to show everything, warts and all. People got very interested, and they started to want the best for me and to take care of me. And I realized, this is a perfect medium for which. So if people want to help me and reach out and help Frank Cronin, I'll let them do that, and that will be a way for me to illustrate that strangers can help strangers. And if they can help me, they can help the homeless. So before I knew it, I had strangers helping me from all over the world, sending me sandwiches. When I got out of the hospital, a complete stranger from I don't know where sent me burgers and a drink, via Uber Eats. It became this interactive, let's help Frank survive and get to San Francisco. And before I knew it, I started to experience like levels of kindness and care and empathy and compassion that I hadn't experienced in years. I had put myself in a vulnerable position, and I realized, despite what the media would say, is that the world is a really beautiful, caring place, and we're not divided. We're united to try and make the world a better place. And if we see someone suffering, we want to help them. So this became the crux of the documentary, which hopefully will come out well. It's basically that the world is a beautiful place, and we can help strangers, and kindness and empathy are in abundance, and it's an untapped resource that we can share.
Yeah. Now you said you had a cameraman with you the first couple of days. When did that end, or did he keep on?
Well, it was a little tough because he was sleeping in his car, and every time I didn't want to slow down,
Yeah.
Because when you slow down, your muscles start to seize up, and my initial plan was to do the whole thing in like under 20 days. So I thought I could either do a marathon a day, get to LA, and the fastest walk ever, or whatever. But so I think he went home just before Christmas, maybe the 23rd. But I would see him in the morning and the evening. So in the morning, we would try and film a piece, the camera, and then if I had a comedy show, like say at the Punchline or the San Jose Improv, where people were letting me jump in on their comedy shows, then he would turn up and record.
Oh, okay.
That was one other element of it. So on the first night I did the San Francisco Punchline, and then on to Daly City to sleep beside the highway.
Yeah.
And then about 3 days later, when I got to San Jose, Craig Shoemaker let me jump up and do 10 minutes on his show. So
sure, Craig's a great guy. He's been on the show. I've known him for years, and he's exactly the kind of guy that would have opened the stage to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, smart guy. And you know, when you start doing things in a certain manner, people who like to do things in a certain manner come out. So we had this great conversation of how an individual, like, the goal in life is to find out how you can be of service to the world as opposed to how you can serve yourself. And I didn't get to talk to him much more than maybe 20 minutes after the show, but yeah, I look forward to kind of crossing paths with him again, because we're both on that same wavelength of like, well, you know, what can you bring to the world? Because lo and behold, being selfless is actually almost selfish, because you get way more in return when you're selfless.
Yeah.
You know? Beautiful thing.
So just let's backtrack a bit in terms of, you know, getting yourself in a condition to do this sort of an endeavor. I know in your background that you were in the Irish Army for a while.
Yeah, the legal one. Relax.
For what?
The legal one.
Yes, the legal one. And what did you do? I mean, how long were you in for?
I believe I was in there for 6 or 7 years, and that was mainly in the Air Corps as a fireman. And then I did a tour of Liberia, West Africa in 2005 with the United Nations Peace Enforcement Mission as part of the Quick Reaction Force. So we were out there in the jungles, and we actually, the coolest thing about that trip was we reconnoitered the land route for Charles Taylor, the dictator, to be moved, but he ended up being flown out. But that was kind of a nice little yeah, we just wasted a lot of time and gas, but it felt pretty good. And yeah, and then I retired. When I got back from Africa, they promoted me. They made me a lieutenant, and then I realized that wasn't for me, and I had this inkling to do more in the arts, so I pursued that and retired after 7 years.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of staying power, it seems.
And that you did a stint a few years ago where you went back to school you'd been here, and then you'd gone back to school in Ireland, and you lived in a tent for a semester.
Yeah, so after the army, you know, when you're in the army, if you play your cards right, and especially if you go overseas, you can, and you're single, you can save up a little bit of money. We call it danger money, you know, when you go overseas with the army. So you get like double pay because there's a risk involved. So I left the army with a little bit of money, and my friend had just married a Mexican girl, so we opened a restaurant in Mexico, you know, just like, you know, next natural step after leaving the army.
Of course.
So yeah, and that went well. So we opened another one, and then it was like 5 or 6 years there, and I still hadn't finished the degree, and my mum was concerned that I would need this degree, and I don't like leaving things unfinished, so I went back to university, but all my money was tied up in this bar and this restaurant in Mexico, which I thought I was kind of cool with business, but I was kind of stupid. I had all my cash in this business, and I had no cash flow, so I didn't have the money for rent. So I thought, I like making videos. I like a challenge. I'm kind of trained to be outdoors. I'll live in a tent for my final year of university. So that's what I did, and it became kind of like a cool thing that ended up, you know, 5 years later, I guess, kind of propelling me in this direction. Let's have an outdoor adventure and show people that you can kind of mess with the matrix, you know?
Ah, absolutely. And so you certainly were able to prepare yourself from a mindset, and also it sounded physically, although like you said, you may have pushed yourself too hard early on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the training for this was pretty much a step counter on my cell phone. So I had an app that would count my steps, and I would up at 2,000 steps, you know, every second day. So by the time I started, I was already doing 20 miles comfortably a day. But what I didn't factor in is I think when you're sleeping at home and you're not sleeping out, your body obviously recovers a lot better. So by the 5th day into the walk, despite all my training, I wasn't getting enough rest or nutrition. So my body broke down or whatever it was, and I got a massive knot in my front right shin, which I thought was shin splints, which is a real killer. That means game over. But I was able to roll it out over about 4 days, and lo and behold, back to normal again.
So other than hamburgers from strangers, what other things did you do for nutrition on this road? Obviously, you didn't carry a whole lot of food with you.
No, well, that's an interesting thing. It's one of the more common questions is like, well, where did you eat? Where did you stop? And if you think about walking from San Francisco all the way to LA, you're never more than, worst case scenario, 40 miles from a gas station.
That's true.
So I found myself eating a lot of stuff in gas stations, or if I was heading over mountains or using railway tracks as shortcuts, I would look at my satellite navigation on my phone. I had 2 different apps running just for redundancy to make sure I was okay, and then I would check the mileage between locations, and then if it was 10 miles, I'd take 2 liters of water and a sandwich just in case. And if it was 20 or 30 miles, then I'd eat as much as I could, take on as much water as I could, take another 2 liters. I'd try and see if there was a river, running by. Worst case scenario, up the mountains, I can refill my water bottle in a river. And then I kind of like get myself prepared mentally. Okay, so you're not going to see another human for 48 hours, but you're going to cut 30 miles off your, trek if you take the railroad. And then I would have these wonderful moments up in the mountains of just like absolute serenity and solitude, and knowing that you're away from everybody is a beautiful, magical experience, Yeah. And you see bridges up there as well that no one has walked on in years probably. And you're there on this big rusty bridge reading the sign like it was made in 1914, and you're probably one of 100 people to ever walk across it. It feels great, These weird kind of moments where you feel like you're out on the cusp, and but all you're really doing is, you're just being an idiot walking through the mountains.
Did you run into other people that were just either walking or camping or just out there away from everyone else?
Yeah, so there's like 2 different worlds in one in terms of people living out. I've kind of broken it down to there's people who are living out, and there's people who are living out by choice, and they have their mental health and they aren't struggling with any addiction. And some people are out there, especially say Ventura or along the coastline, you might have some surfers who are really living in their tents in some bushes with their surfboard beside them. And then there's the people who are who have a lack of clarity, and they're not really present, or they may have a mental or physical affliction, or they may have an addiction. And they're the people who really need the help, and they're who I was doing the walk for. So on the walk, I met some very interesting people. I guess let's just say one guy who I walked about 15 miles one night near Salinas was an ex-con who had an ex-convict who had got out of prison about 5 years earlier and found it very hard to reintegrate back into society. He had stolen a police car, which the video is pretty cool actually. That'll go in the documentary. He gave me permission to put it out there, but he was able to give me some direction about finding safe spots to sleep and what to look out for on the ground, and he also gave me some indication of what to watch out for when dealing with people in terms of watching out for predators. Predator types, which will look at you as if they're an animal sizing up prey, and he gave me the full rundown and embodiment of that, so that I could be aware of that, And
did you run into people like that?
Well, funny enough, I think he may have been one of those people.
Oh, interesting.
And, I think he was playing inside chess. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not 100% sure, but I didn't bump into anyone like that in particular. I bumped into a lot of people who were struggling on many different levels in terms of their health. So some with drug addiction, which I think the prevalence is 34% in the States. In California, for people who are living out, who are struggling with an addiction, it's 34 or 37%. And there's a lot of people with opioid addictions. And then there's a lot of people walking around late at night, as we know, on methamphetamine. And one of the things that came up in conversations with these guys was a lot of the time when they started out in the streets, they weren't addicted to meth, but they found it very stressful, and I found it too, very stressful, sleeping in built-up areas, so that they tried to escape by using drugs, and then before they knew it, they were addicted. And by being on meth, you can stay up all night, be alert, and then sleep when it's safer during the day. And then you won't be bothered by the police if you're up and about moving, you know?
Yeah. Now, I know from seeing some of your Instagram videos and whatnot that you got roused by the cops a few times. What were those experiences like?
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess I was pulled over at walking speed about 5 times. Straight up, I had my experiences with the police were very much like my experiences in Ireland. You know, it's a tense moment. You show your respect, put your hands in the air, and you explain exactly what you're doing as quickly as you can, and then the tension dissipates, and then they were on side pretty much to help me on my way. There was one night they pulled me over. They stopped me, and I got it. I got the whole stop on camera, which will go into the documentary. It was pretty sweet, and then by the end of that, they were actually helping me. They said, hey, look, this part of the highway, because we control this section here, you can hop down there over that bridge, walk along here, and sneak in there, and then you'll cut about 5 miles off your journey. And because there's no boot road beside it, it's legal. And I was like, oh, brilliant. So I had the cops on side all of a sudden. You know? And another time coming just after Santa Barbara, man, I didn't know that mountain lions were a real thing in California. Like, I knew they existed, but I didn't think it was something that I would really have to consider. So just coming into Santa Barbara or north of Santa Barbara, I was pulled over again by the cops, and they said, hey, just so you know, like, it's coming up to 1 a.m. and you're out in the street and you're thinking of going over those mountains. They go, yeah, well, that's not a good idea. We've had a lot of mountain lion sightings. So they told me to, just lie down at the side of the road, which seemed kind of silly because if I was walking, at least I was a moving target. Now they were just telling me to stay still, like a mountain lion buffet. Yeah.
Well, that's funny. So as you're making your way through this, what sounds like a very arduous journey, you are at the same time a comedian, right? So how much of this is going into the boiler that's going to eventually emerge as material? Well,
Mark, you know yourself, you kind of talk it out with friends, and before you know it, you're finding punchlines that were just under the surface. So every bit of radio I do and every interview that I have the privilege of doing like this, I find little things when I listen back. And I would say I'll try and do a whole show based around it because I think I've got something to share. I think there's some depth to it, and there's a lot of tension and sadness in there, and there's nothing like tension and sadness sadness and despair to create tension. And then once you can pierce that tension, there's often a lot of relief and laughter,
We'll get into the second half of my interview with Frank Cronin right after this unimportant message from one of our pretend sponsors.
Hello, friends. Bill Haywatt here with some awesome news from the good folk at Henderson's Pants. They are finally all aboard the recycling bandwagon. That's right. It took a while, but all of your cards, letters, and court injunctions finally caught the attention of Old Man Henderson, and he's vowed to give up his resource-gobbling habit the same way he puts on his new Henderson scavenger slacks, one leg at a time. The material for these new dress pants is as varied as there are days in a year. That's because Henderson's dumpster diving legions are out there right now, rag-picking every scrap of discarded cloth they can find, whether it's denim, corduroys, burlap, hemp, cotton, twill, or even in some cases aluminum foil. They're popping it into their collection sacks and scurrying back to Henderson's main factory in Lenexa, Kansas. Once there, Henderson's Pantsketeers work their magic and combine all that cloth into pairs and pairs of trousery wonder. Pairs and pairs of trouser wondery. That's better. Originally designed for middle-aged court jesters, professional golfers, and your Uncle Ned. Henderson scavenger slacks are going to be all the rage if the company can ever afford to once again gas up their fleet of delivery trucks. That's Henderson's, makers of buckled swashes and jerkin gherkins since 1347. And now back to Succotash.
I think I can show people something. I think I can, in a weird way, maybe educate myself and educate other people by talking about it. And I learned a lot along the way, man. It's weird when you're alone and in solitude. I'm sure you know this, and anyone who's kind of walked the earth a bit, it's like things start to speak to you in terms of I don't get too profound, but you kind of find yourself on the road. You start to discover exactly who you are when you're not constantly being picked at and pulled at by other people. You start to understand, oh, this is how I feel about the world. This is my point of view about the world. And one thing that I discovered, or at least I'm investigating, with my thoughts as I walk around trying to think about what's important in life, is that there's like a moral responsibility to live a good life, and to be a good person. And it's not just for like your own sake or it's because we're all so interlinked, especially now. We put this podcast out and maybe someone listens to it and decides to go for a walk and, raise some money for a charity. It's like the repercussions of living a bad life or not your best life are way stronger than they ever were before. So I've gone from kind of being flippant about, I'll do this, I'll do that, to, well, what's the best use of my time on this planet while I'm here for the next 50 years? And can I actually instigate some real change for the better? And can I be of use instead of just like cracking silly jokes? Can I be a better human?
Yeah.
And I got all that from walking the train tracks and trying to dodge mountain lions.
Well, it's funny because I've done a number of these vision quests with some Native American friends of mine, where you just go out into the woods or wherever they're holding these times for like 3 or 4 days, and you're by yourself. You go out with a small group of people, but then you're by yourself for 3 or 4 days. And being in that isolation really does, as you're talking about, does kind of open your eyes as to the kind of person you are, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people, you can tell that sort of an experience to. And I didn't do this 500-mile long walk that you did. But just the idea of being alone for 4 days terrifies people. The idea that they, get away from the idea that maybe a mountain lion will show up at your tent. But the idea that you're just by yourself and people go, how did you do that? It's just, we're so surrounded and inundated by media and people and all this stuff that it's amazing how just a few days of isolation can suddenly open your eyes.
Absolutely, Mark. And here's a funny thing. What is it it must be incredibly powerful, whatever it is, whatever that energy or whatever that thing is that's running along parallel to us, that's right there, right now, beside every single one of us. It must be incredible if we have to distract ourselves 24/7 rather than look at it and be alone with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Whatever it is, some people probably call it God, a higher power, or whatever. But just to sit alone in nature as a human is not kooky. That's not crazy. That's the only thing that's actually not neurosis.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Isn't that crazy? And we're so scared of it, man. We have to drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, drink beer, anything but sit with it. Because it's so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
We're afraid to take on the responsibility of what it would be to be completely in line with that energy.
That's interesting.
That's my thought. I got that out there. I don't know if it's true, but I'm working on that thought.
No, I think there's definitely something to it. These experiences I had, you would fast for your time out there, so there was no distraction in terms of eating or drinking or anything else. You'd have you could maybe have like a cup of tea or something, but that was about it.
How funny is that, Marc? That they've been doing that for generations and thousands of years. People. We like to kind of think of, it's religion, or, not everyone, some people are religious, but it's like, it's silly, don't mind that, we have science now. It's like, yes, but for thousands of years, all over the world, people who don't know each other have spent time alone in the mountains, fasting, and paying attention to just nature.
Yeah.
We're really missing something. We're caught up in a rat race that pulls us away from exactly what we are, our very being, and we need to be careful about that.
Yeah,
because it's so cool, man, that exists, and it's a choice. It's like 3 days in the mountains with fasting away from a moment of enlightenment that will last your whole life.
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. What was, were there any moments that really stand out in your mind, whether it was a sunrise or somebody you ran into or something else that kind of you think you'll always carry with you?
Yeah, man, I was starting to have, I think it was day 5. I was supposed to have a show with Craig Shoemaker, or at least jump in on his show that night at the San Jose Improv. And that morning I had woken up after about 4 hours sleep in very, very cold, misty NorCal weather. And I had hopped a fence into the back of a dentist's office where I was getting my teeth checked out for the documentary. And I wasn't feeling good mentally or physically. I was sleep deprived, and I was thinking I had bitten off more than I could chew, and I was trying to run a production and trying to create a documentary, a pilot or a sizzle or some ambitious thing in my head that was going to go on and change the world and blah 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 blah. So I'm kind of falling apart at the seams, and I walk out of the dentist after we filmed that segment, and I'm just like, man, what am I doing? It's day 5 and I'm already falling apart mentally and physically. And then I meet this guy called Andrew, who is just a guy who's living no drama here, in a ditch under a piece of plastic. But he has a shopping cart, and on that shopping cart he has a gas stove that he's figured out, he's thrown together, kind of fixed up. And he sees, I didn't see him until he saw me. He just goes, hey, let me cook you breakfast or whatever. Let me cook you a sausage. This is homeless guy. I'm out there trying to do a documentary on homelessness and trying to raise money for the homeless. And this man who has nothing is offering to cook me breakfast, and we dude, I just absorbed his goodness, man. Like, he had a few things going on, that you could tell he wasn't his best self.
Yeah.
But the compassion and empathy, he saw me, he saw I needed something, and he was willing to share the little he had. And that was the turning point in the whole thing. I realized, it's not about me. It's not about me running or getting from San Francisco to LA and being this cool guy it's about the people I meet along the way, and compassion and empathy. And that's when it changed, and that's when everybody online started getting on board after that day. Beautiful.
Well, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah, man, I'll never forget that, dude. If anyone is ever in San Jose and they meet Andrew, or they just give him a big hug,
or if they need a sausage.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, he cooked some mean sausage, man. Yeah, man, and that was also a day, because you think you're kind of, well, I thought I was always kind of open-minded and cool, and here I am doing this thing. But we all have these pre-programmed ideas in our heads from whatever experiences we've had. But that interaction pulled back the last little filter and let my guard. So whenever I met anybody else, then I was aware that it wasn't me bringing them something. It was me, when talking to them, they were helping me better understand the world. And that was like when my ego got out of the way a little bit.
Yeah. It was interesting as your journey was going on, seeing the people that were sort of retweeting your stuff and rooting you on. And I know one of the people you were trying to get the attention of was Ellen DeGeneres. And were you ever successful in getting a hold of her?
Well, actually, I did the pre-interview there 2 days ago, so that may or may not happen. The goal there is, I was talking to a producer for 30 minutes. It felt like it went great, but I guess you're kind of auditioning. You're up against Martin Scorsese or Jennifer Aniston. So like if I can if I beat those, I'm delighted. The goal to get on there was, she's got a massive platform, man. And when you realize when you're exposed in close quarters and trying to let it permeate you, I feel like I have a message to share, which is just, something that could be dissipated really well from her huge platform. As well, she's the kind of lady that kind of would quadruple down. If you raise 20,000, which we did, she might say, well, guess what? We're going to give the charity 100,000. So it's like the perfect finish would be to get on Ellen and her to, drop a few 100,000 on the charity, something like that.
That would be great. Well, maybe she'll listen to us here on Succotash, and who knows? I knew her a long time ago, and I don't know that she would listen to our show. But let's say she does.
I wouldn't put it past her. It's a great show. Is she? Were you guys doing stand-up together?
I was producing stand-up. She was doing shows, but we became friends, and we used to hang out. There was always I used to hang out at the Improv in L.A., in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
And she lived like 2 blocks away, and she would come and do sets. And then for a while, there was a fear that there were people mugging customers in the parking lot, so I'd walk her home. But
if you were as thick as thieves, as they say. You guys were close.
Oh yeah, I actually was. I got to go with her backstage at one of her early Tonight Show appearances, along with her brother and another comedian, Jake Johansson.
Well, if it works out, man, I'll definitely mention that I know you, because that's a cool thing, man. To meet people before they pop, and that's it's the further up the food chain I think you get in showbiz, the harder it is to decipher where people are coming from energetically. So I think, if I meet her, I'll definitely mention, hey, my friend Marc, knew you before you were doing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure she'll remember. She was always a great person, and she's had such great success, and she really deserves it. So I just hope that she shines some light on you, because I think this cause you've marched literally yourself into is so worthwhile. That it certainly bears some attention from people that can truly help bring even more attention from the public at large to it.
Thanks, man. And the message is pretty simple. It's not like any individual has to take on the whole burden and fix it themselves. It's my what I figured out on this walk, or at least I think I've figured out, is it's okay to do a little, try and make it habitual. And a smile, some eye contact, and some conversation is enough. It's enough, because what I found out there on the road, as I became more and more disheveled, say week 2, week 3, beard starts growing in, clothes are dirty, there's mud on the jeans, there's mud on the shoes, or not on the jeans, on the trousers, and you start to look a little fragile behind the eyes, and you're not sleeping well, and your face is kind of disintegrating before you. You start to become one of the out group. And you start to be looked at as other than, and then you stop being looked at all, and you become almost invisible. And I did a little psychology in college, and one of the lines that stuck out to me was, you only truly know who you are or a lot of people decipher and figure out who they are based on how other people treat them. And as people start treating you as invisible or less than, it's impossible, man. And I had all the support in the world, but it's impossible for your self-esteem and your sense of self not to take a beating. And I was getting 100,000 million billion likes and messages, and you can do it, and oh, this is great, and all that. And inside all of that love, because I wasn't getting eye contact, because nobody was saying you're worth it, and because no one was looking at me in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not only not looking at me, but looking away and making sure that their kids didn't look at me.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing more. I haven't experienced anything as it's almost an existential crisis. You can't even. It's like you feel like you don't exist, and I was only scratching the surface of it. So imagine long term, you're not getting any hugs, no one is looking at you, and your mental health is slowly slipping away.
Yeah.
And what I found was, like week 3, it was hard for me to ask for directions. I found it hard to. I stopped trying to get into certain buildings, like to charge my phone, because I would just stick to Starbucks or something generic, because I didn't want to be told no. And when you have your backpack on your back, it's like people just see you coming, and you can sense, even if they're doing their best, you can sense that they don't want you in their domain. And so my message, here's the message: a little bit of eye contact, a little bit of a smile, maybe a few dollars to a charity who knows how to use your money well, and let's just be careful about how we frame people who are living out in our minds. When we see someone, just be aware of how we treat them. And in that first interaction, when you're walking by someone, do you acknowledge their existence? Do you make eye contact? Do you smile? Do you take a moment to talk to them so that they know they're still human? That's all.
Yeah, that's great. It's so important. Let me just jump to the end of your journey ends at Dynasty Typewriter in Los Angeles, right? So you're literally just sort of getting off the road and getting on stage.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was cool. Coming into LA, I had a few stops along the way. I had the Malibu Playhouse, and then I got to jump on a little TV down near El Segundo, near the airport. So I was verbally pretty ready to go, but I was completely exhausted and kind of dead on my feet. But I had, pushed this final show. Okay, I'm going to walk in there, go on stage with some slides and tell the story. And Jeff Garland was going to show up. He had agreed to show up, and he did a set up top. He had been encouraging me via text the whole way, and actually dropped $5,000 on the charity because he's a sweet dude. Nice. And I'd never met him before. He's just like he's all for it, Preacher Lawson from America's Got Talent was on the show. Moses Storm from Conan was hosting. So it was this beautiful, talented hotbed of talent, and they're all doing comedy day in, day out, and ready to go. And then there's little me, weary, with very few jokes formed and a slideshow. And yeah, man, we had about 100 people there, and it was a beautiful thing, man, because people embraced the comedy of Jeff Garland, Preacher, and Moses, and then there was the slideshow, which allowed us to kind of slip into a little bit more understanding of the journey and how we can kind of better serve our weakest citizens, I think. And I think it worked out pretty good,
Wow, that's amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah, and we handed over the check, dude, which is probably the biggest thing. I've never handed over a big check to anyone, and we handed over $20,000 that night to the Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles charity.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it was a teary moment.
That's great.
Yeah.
So if people want to reach out and help, again, it's Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, HHCLA, in social media.
Yeah, hhcla.org, and even if you don't know what to do with your money, they do, and they'll do it well. So that's great.
That's cool. And how do people get a hold of you? I mean, you're all over social media. You're easy to find, but what do people look for when they want to get a hold of Frank Cronin?
Yeah, if you put in Francis Cronin into the internet anywhere, FrancisCronin, you'll find me. I'm still at that level where I have to spell my name, but I'm there. Yeah.
Well, I will have linkages to all the places I know where to find you, Frank. Nice. On our succotashshow.com website.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Absolutely. And I should be in LA before too long, so let's get together and catch up in person.
That would be a pleasure. And Mark, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you using your platform to get the word out. So.
It's always my pleasure. Glad you arrived safe and sound in at your destination. And I look curious to see what sort of reverberations your adventure is going to have in the future.
Yeah, same here, man. I think there's more to do, but I've figured out a few things about how to do it. So that's the main thing.
Excellent. Well, Frank, thanks again so much, and continued success as you find your other ways to get the attention of show business.
Oh, yeah. Well, Well, yeah, that was a little, that definitely got some attention. That's for sure. But yeah, there's a part of me that after that walk, I got enough attention. I'm more interested in what can I bring of value and depth to the world, because we're only here a short time. May as well do something a bit bigger than ourselves. And also, when you do things that are bigger than yourself, people pay attention. You can't really hide from it,
Yeah.
If you're doing anything of value to the world, no matter how hard you try, the world will come after you and try and hold you up. So, I don't know, man. You can't win. It's very hard to do something of value and hide out. I got a taste of a little too much attention for my liking.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like you've learned some valuable lessons, and I think you've helped teach a few along the way too, which is kind of a great formula.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
All right, Frank. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Bye. Well, quite an amazing journey friend Frank was on, right? I was so captivated by his story that I realized afterwards there were a few questions that I'd thought of that I forgot to ask. So I texted him and got some responses back. Like, where did he go to the bathroom? Number 2, he texted back, quote, "In the cities I availed myself of Starbucks' new relaxed restroom policy or anywhere else that would have me. I had a lovely shower at a truck stop one day off of the 101, smiley face. In the wilderness, wherever there is no mountain lions, one thing is to be eaten, another to be eaten with your pants down." Unquote. I also asked him what his thoughts and feelings were when he was finally able to get into his own bed that first night after finishing this amazing trek. He texted, quote, "I had some feelings of guilt about being safe and warm, knowing all the people I met were still out there," unquote. And then finally I asked him what his parents back in Ireland thought about his crazy adventure. He hit me back with, quote, "My parents enjoyed the journey. They love the outdoors and adventure. They took pride in the fact that it was for a great cause, and they enjoyed following me on satellite tracking via my website. They spent a lot of time suggesting routes," unquote. Once again, thanks for sharing your experience with us, Frank. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Glowpunk, GLOWPUNK. You can also still donate to his Rough Set GoFundMe page, and the link to that is up on our succotashshow.com page, or you can go directly to the folks that he's been giving his money to, Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, and their URL is hhcla.org. And again, there's a link to that at succotashshow.com. And now this.
This episode of Succotash is sponsored in part by TrumPoetry.com, a chronological ode to a fake muse. Enjoy a rhyming spin on the news of the day every day, as well as over 500 archived daily verses thoroughly covering the White House, America, and the world with a sticky caramel coating that's impossible to remove. That's TRUMPoetry.com. Everything you need to know in rhyming couplets. TrumPoetry.com.
Here are a couple of short, very short, poems to tide you over until you can get to TrumpPoetry.com yourself. This one is from January 4th of this year. It's poem number 747. His staff is a hemorrhaging mess. The government shut, more or less. The market has fallen, soon Mueller comes calling, and this he calls, quote, too much success, unquote. And the second poem is from January 21st, also of this year, number 730. There once was a MAGA hat teen. To an elder vet he appeared mean. One's cause to get ired by what had transpired depends on what footage was seen. All right, that about does it for Succotash Chats Epi187. I want to thank our special guest, Frank Cronin, and I encourage you to hop over to our home site at succotashshow.com and click on the various links to Frank, his story, and Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, too. If you want to send big congrats to our host Tyson and his wife Laura on the birth of their son Jareth, you may reach out to him via Twitter at RevT23 or send an email to him at Tyson@succotashshow.com. And remember that T-Man will be back here in the big chair before you know it. Until then, you're stuck with me. So I hope that's all right. In the meantime, please remember, for all the people you know, to pass the succotash. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Succotash Chats, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast with your substitute host, Marc Hershon. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants, TrumPoetry.com, and...
Imagine your company's name right here.
Yes, find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube, on SoundCloud, and on the Laughable app. You can hear us streaming and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Succotash Show. Email us at marc@succotashshow.com or call into the Succotash Skype line at our toll call number 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
Production of Succotash is overseen by Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, the home of the hit. Our regular host is Tyson Sainer. Our musical director is Scott Carvey. Our booth assistant is Kenny Durgis.
That's me.
Until next time, I'm your loyal booth announcer, Bill Haywatt, reminding you to please pass the succotash. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.